Welcome to the Basic Income Show. I'm your host, Scott Santens. I'm here with my co-host, Conrad Shaw, and our other co-host, Josh Worth, is out today, so it'll be just the two of us. And we'll be talking about the latest news in basic income that's happened over the previous 3 weeks since we did our last episode. And for those who are new to this is it's all about whatever is newest in the world of basic income just around the world. And this week, I'd like to start off with the fact that, we actually just had the Basic Income Conference in DC last week.
It's called the
And
Big Conference.
yeah,
It's not the biggest conference I've ever been to, but it's called the Big Conference. It stands for Basic Income Guarantee, if you want to look it up.
yeah, it used to be put on by US Big. You can find it at usbig.net, and they're still part of it. But now Income Movement handles the organizing of these events, and there were over 300 people there this year.
Yeah.
It's always a great time to see everybody. Conrad even did a couple presentations on the first. It was 2-day thing, and on the evening of the first night, Conrad presented some new a new cut of like the pilot episode of Bootstraps, and he also on the second day talked about Comingle. So I don't know if Conrad, you want to talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that experience?
I actually had great fun this year because usually I just kind of volunteer and help out with those guys, and I've been talking for going on 9 years about like Bootstraps and Comingle is coming and like showing little snippets, but we're getting pretty close, and being able to show a full pilot episode was fun. It was very rough cut. Like our editors were cranking it out with some very new stuff, and I hadn't even seen it. So I was sight unseen along with the audience. So that was exciting, but it's really coming together. And then with the Comingle, we presented basically where it's at and the idea of Comingle as a tool for activism and supporting each other. And my two metrics of a successful presentation is one, my joke at the beginning got a laugh, which is always great. And then in the middle, we got some unexpected applause when I announced that Comingle, we're planning on turning Comingle on for a couple of internal members to start beta testing with real money flow next month in July. So, I kind of just put that out there as part of our, like, this is our rollout. A few more months, we'll invite some more beta testers in that aren't part of the team. And then hopefully by the end of the year, we'll launch a big pilot. But yeah, spontaneous applause reminded me that I've been talking about this for a while, and maybe some people actually listened, and we're hoping we weren't full of it. So
The joke that you did involved an impression. So you want to do a quick impression? You can either do the same joke or just come up with something on the spot doing something else.
I couldn't come up with something better. It was a meme I saw, and I'm like, did I even do this before on this podcast? But it was a JFK ripoff joke where he said, we fight for UBI not because it is easy, but because we thought it would be easy.
Yeah, it's good. It works.
Yeah.
I like it. It's a good impression.
Thanks.
I think that besides being in the audience for both those and enjoying that, and I actually did I recorded the audio of each of those, even like the Q&A session of Bootstraps. Considered like being able to go through actually a little bit of your Comingle talk, but it's just audio anyways, and you just covered the basics. But I really enjoyed personally, like it's just a lot more activist oriented recently. It was always originally, this has been going on since I think the first conference was 99, and it's always been very academic, and that was its origins. It would go between Canada and the US, and now it's just more a lot more people like movement oriented, trying to figure out like how to get involved and how to get things moving. And this year it was new kind of feeling. Like we've had basic income pilot participants in previous years, but they were as like a significant percentage of this one. I remember the total of the number of people that traveled there. I'd have to look that up, but it was a good number of basic income pilot participants that were there. And so I was really hoping to get some feedback from them on the Bootstraps footage, but also it was just great having them in these workshops that we'd have too. So instead of just like your typical conference where you watch people on stage and they give their talk and then maybe have a Q&A, and there's some slides presented or something. Now there's
Yeah.
more sitting at tables with people and kind of working on idea projects together. And
Right.
then I'm looking forward to the results of those table sessions coming out after they get organized by income movement and released later.
I mean, it's just such a much more powerful energy when instead of a bunch of people getting up and talking about their papers or their economic studies or whatever, and people who have thought about this idea a lot, you have people in the room who've lived it. And it makes all the difference, and sort of the reason why we wanted to do a documentary. Yeah, I was thinking I could instead of doing audio from the whole speech, I could sort of summarize the main thought if you want. I pulled it up. Part of the idea of basic
Sure.
income is that it means something different to everybody, and so for this audience, this is an audience of activists. So I wanted to point out a very key thing in sort of the activism world um, is that burnout is a huge issue. Lack of participation is a huge issue. That people needing to take care of themselves is a huge issue. So the final thought I left people with is so many of us here have given so much of our time, talent, and personal security in order to fight for this radical idea of basic income. Activist causes are always self-sacrificial in this way. And burnout is an enormous problem within every movement. Imagine instead a movement that immediately and persistently protects and empowers everyone in it. How much easier would it be to give our time and energy to this work? How many more might join us in it? And I really do think that represents a radical shift in the way grassroots people power stuff could happen. Because the way it is today is you take a risk, you sacrifice your time to fight for something you believe in, and it's at your own expense. Generally, there aren't many people fighting for civic change or whatever that get paid for it. So what if there was a community you could plug into, and the first step is just to start getting helped? How many more people will do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Besides, in general, I wish that activists, especially those on the left who may for whatever reason dislike basic income for I don't know, capitalistic reasons and stuff, but they can see it as being this tool of empowerment where you're able to get it on the streets. You can there's no tool better for enabling general strikes. There's no tool better for enabling typical standard strikes. And just being able to run for office, being able to knock on doors, all of the stuff is empowered by basic
Yeah.
income. And so besides Comingle too, which is really helpful, to create to a degree to have that some kind of small floor, at least increasing your security, um, and connecting people to each other. One of my favorite thing from this particular conference too was the announcement of the Union of Basic Income Participants. So I'm just going to read this this little intro to it. And this is being organized by Income Movement. So yeah, everyone should know the Union of Basic Income Pilot Participants is a group created by and for pilot participants. It serves as a space for pilot participants to step into the role of advocates and community organizers for the movement for basic income with the support of their community. Too often, lived experience experts in our movement take their cues about advocacy from their pilot administrators, researchers, funders, or policy organizations. This creates an inherent power imbalance that mirrors the traditional top down model for policy design, where constituents respond to the needs or proposals laid out by experts. At the heart of the union is an infrastructure for participants to share their experiences, needs, hopes, and goals for policy and advocacy work, and to collectively build power to have a seat at the table when policy is being designed. By creating an organizing entity by and for pilot participants that is adequately funded, the UBIP aims to center power in the hands of the community that basic income programs and policies are intended to serve. As a movement, we have approached the idea of power building with pilot participants in a number of ways that, while impactful, often do not sustain past the duration of the pilot itself. At the same time, we consistently hear from many pilot participants that they are interested in supporting long-term systems change. Now more than ever, as federal dollars disappear and dozens of pilots continue to sunset each year, There is real urgency to support participants in organizing themselves toward long-term advocacy. A union creates the necessary infrastructure to support a growing wave of participants to own their own narratives and data about GBI's impact and give them the keys to use it for their own goals and influencing those with power to adopt new cash policies. Central to this group is our understanding that its strength, decisions, and processes must be rooted in its members. Leadership, decision making processes, and prioritizing goals and focus areas will be exclusively in the hands of pilot participants. The foundation for the UBIP will be created by an advisory board of pilot participants from across the country. They will do initial ideating around the function, processes, and focus of the union in its infancy. Concurrently, as the advisory board builds out initial structures, Income Movement will support building the general membership via invitations to pilot participants from pilot administrators across the country. Over its initial months, participant members will work with the advisory board through an iterative and democratic process. This union will flip the script on the traditional financial model for labor organizing. Instead of members paying dues, members will be paid for their engagement. Every effort put forth by every member will be valued and recognized through compensation for their contributions and participation. This means the union will provide a soft landing for pilot participants as their pilot sunset, providing small but meaningful payments to every union member as they build their own paths toward advocacy. Beyond general membership compensation, paid leadership and advisory roles will be carried by participants. Participants in these roles will receive compensation commensurate to their responsibilities. By mid 2025, there will have been nearly 200 guaranteed basic income pilots in the United States, with more than 38,000 community members having experienced a guaranteed basic income. Together, we can provide the necessary financial, professional, and social capital to support participants in their long term organizing and advocacy efforts. Income Movement is committed to providing tools, resources, frameworks, access to experts, and other support that participants determine are necessary to their organizing and advocacy work. Areas of knowledge and skill development may include community-centered decision-making processes, systems for developing goals and priorities, synthesizing qualitative stories with quantitative data for impactful advocacy, event organizing and management, development of direct action campaigns, software and design development for social media narrative change campaigns, and more. So yeah, if you're interested in helping with that, if you're a basic income pilot participant who's hearing about this for the first time, reach out to Income Movement. And if you're interested in helping with that too, like in funding or anything, reach out to Income Movement. I think it's a great idea. I'm really looking forward to you know the basic income pilot participants like getting more involved and organized like through this.
Yeah, I want to go a little deeper into like why this is so important as well. And this is another thing that people in the room seem especially hungry for is this idea of mutual aid, collective action, grassroots organizing. I have this sort of inequality equation in my head where it's like, so government is the ideal, like it should represent all of us doing a thing. It's sort of like the biggest form of mutual aid. But what we've been leaning on for a long time is philanthropy for all this work. And philanthropy is just a couple of people with a lot of money deciding whether or not they want to support a thing at a time. So it's fickle. The money can dry up, which is what the movement is experiencing in a big way right now. They can wield significant power, but they can go away, and it's all dependent on the worldviews of a few people with limited perspectives. And then I think a step better than that is charity, because it's at least large numbers of regular people sort of connecting with each other without it being quite as top down, quite as sort of elitist, but there's still that separation between people of like I'm benevolent giver and you're the needy recipient, and it sort of does create this separation in who's who. The sort of the ideal and that what has the most potential to grow is mutual aid, is solidarity. It is us all coming together, and this idea that collective action by massive numbers of people will, like, just all pushing to different degrees in the same direction, will massively overpower and be more productive and beneficial than very concerted action by very talented but limited numbers of individuals, right? Like, there's plenty of people doing think tanky stuff, lobbying stuff, but from the very beginning, it's like if we could tap my thinking is if we can really tap into a true grassroots movement, and that's the way this sort of thing has to happen. So UBI in general, as a policy, and Comingle, what we're sort of trying to replicate, is sort of a connective tissue and a framework for a movement like that to go and to grow and to live. So yeah, I'm really hopeful that we can demonstrate, like, if we can get 10,000 people together as a first step, like sharing money, empowering themselves, like what do they do? Doesn't people? I'll take 10,000 people pushing towards something any day over the 10 of the best and brightest people on the planet. Like, there is something to human collaboration that is the magic secret sauce of human prosperity and evolution. Yeah, that's my little chat.
Yeah, it's really about working together. We're just so much more. We can do so much
Yeah.
more together for sure.
So there's that level of empowerment, and there's also the empowerment of, like, here's like so it's all well and good. Yeah, let's get millions of people together. Sounds great. And like every now and then people are like, let's do a general strike, and like, a
Yeah.
1,000 people do it for a day, and then they're like, oh, Jesus, we need like 20 million people to do it, right? So how do you actually do that? You have to build an infrastructure. Like, organizing that is incredibly difficult. But when you have a place, and that's kind of the purpose of Comingle, is to have a place where an infrastructure that can encompass and connect all of these people very easily.
I mean, yeah, it just really depends on the the people out there. Like, I mean, I'm one of those people, but because I'm one of those people, I'm hoping there's other people out there, but those who are interested in being, net payers into the commingle system. Like,
Yeah.
you have to have a mindset that says, and I want to donate in the most effective way possible to those, especially in poverty, but even above the poverty line, those who are, especially those who like don't actually qualify for anything, who are just like right above those lines and get nothing. To be
Yeah.
able to be one of those people who says, yeah, like I want to like help them automatically, no strings, no bureaucracy. There's got to be people out there that
Well,
agree with that.
I mean, people all the time are like, no one's ever going to join this if they're going to lose money. Why would anyone logically
Yeah.
ever do that? And it's like, why is there a $500 billion charitable market in this country? Like, people want to to give back.
Yeah.
Like, people are purpose-seeking creatures, and we care about each other. And so that is a $500 billion market that has room to grow, but we tap into a very small chunk of that by showing that this is a far more efficient way.
Well,
There's like 1% overhead rather than 30% overhead, and it all goes straight to people. That's a compelling argument, I think.
we see people, it's just such a common thing too for people to be in these basic income pilots. And even if they're like a pilot focused on homelessness, like the very low income and in great need, everyone would agree that they're in great need. Even among those participants, like they're looking to actually donate a percentage of their income that they're receiving. Like, and part of it is they feel more human. Like it's not that like they need the money, but like they know, and they take pride in like being able to be in a position where they can give money to others, especially when they're surrounded by people who are in greater need than they are, because here they are being a part of a basic income pilot and others around them aren't, and they're
Yeah.
like, I can help out with my community.
Well, another thing that's so empowering about this, and that's another thing people say all the time to us, is like, well, you'll never get the millionaires and billionaires to do this, so it'll fail. It's like, first of all, I disagree. We are going to, they might not be the first, but we build this big enough and have enough social pressure and make their philanthropies look silly, then yeah, we will. But that's not the point. We don't need them. We have way more power collectively than the billionaire class. And that's one of the things I found out, like, in in great numerical detail by looking through the data to try to build the UBI calculator, is it's really the top 10, 20, 30%. Like, most of the wealth can and income lives in that chunk. Now, obviously, a ton is hoarded by like the 0.001%, and that should be redistributed, and would help. The commingle model and a UBI model can actually be very impactful and successful if, with everyone who joins making under six figures. Like, it can still work. That's the point, is we can build this without waiting for these people to become convinced or grow a conscience or like believe in it. We can just do it.
Yeah. Like really, if the middle class decides that they want to just, you know, make sure and start lifting up people first, then they can do that, like
Yeah, and
we don't need the billionaires. Like we can do it ourselves.
to your point, like, a lot of data and studies and feedback and like my own experience asking people, but also witnessing people getting a basic income, is that $500 trillion or the $500 billion the for charitable giving isn't just millionaires and billionaires and philanthropists. In fact, the lower the income goes, the bigger percentage of their income people tend to want to give. Like they sort of connect more greatly with the people around them. So we had a man who was had no income, experiencing homelessness, was surviving off of collecting bottles and cans and for like $12 after several hours of work. One of the first things he did with his basic income was buy Christmas presents for his nieces, and then he would help out his buddy on the street. Like, that is just a truth about humanity. So I think that is our bread and butter, is all of us. When people ask, like, why would someone do that? Like, I fully intend to join immediately, obviously. But even if it wasn't my project, like, this is a way that I know can work to give back. Like, I lived in New York City for years and struggling, and at a time where I would have been a net recipient, I'm sure. But as like an engineering sort of thinker, I'd be walking to work every day and walking past homeless people, panhandlers, people just in desperate situations asking for money. And it's incredibly disappointing to be like, okay, I don't have, first of all, if I give you $1, is it going to really help you that much? I don't have $100 for the 100 people I walk across. I can hardly take care of myself. If there was some efficient system for taxation that would go into a program that would work very well, this is before like I even knew about the idea of UBI, that would be fantastic. And there should be some sort of economies of scale sort of a way to do this. So I was already sort of searching for this idea, but because it didn't exist, I sort of tacitly assumed that it must be a resource scarcity thing. Like, if we could just take care of this, why wouldn't we? We'd be monsters, or we'd be ignorant, or whatever. And that first article I read about UBI was like, yeah, we could just do this. And the napkin math was like, God damn it, it's true. We could do this several times over. So what's wrong with us? Why aren't we doing it? I would love to pay taxes into like, people hate taxes extra in America because it's so opaque and it goes towards all these terrible things. But in places where the taxes get spent in ways that people are happier with, places where there's less poverty, people are much more willing to pay taxes because they know what they're getting. That's essentially what we're setting up.
Along those lines, here's one of the videos that came out recently. There's Newark, New Jersey's program results came out, and this video was part of it. I actually haven't watched this video yet, so this is kind of a first. It's a short one, but yeah, I haven't watched it yet, so I'm curious.
In Newark, New Jersey, we want to be at the cutting edge of implementing policy solutions that lift the economic resilience of our residents. That is why we just concluded the state's largest guaranteed income pilot in its history. What is a guaranteed income? It is an income floor in the form of direct recurring cash payments. The Newark pilot, called the Newark Movement for Economic Equity, provided 400 randomly selected residents living at 200% or less of the federal poverty line $6,000 a year for 2 years. Of 400 Newarkers randomly selected to receive a guaranteed income, 200 received $250 twice a month, and 200 received $3,000 twice per year. We wanted to test different designs to learn what kind of support our residents need to thrive. We also identified a control group of 478 people from the pool of qualified applicants.
I feel that's definitely
so we could
AI, by
see
the way.
Impact of the program. So what happens when we provide an income floor and trust families to make their own decisions? Housing security improves. People receiving recurring payments were better able to maintain stable housing than the control group. Those receiving lump sum payments were able to handle big transitions like moving. Households become more financially resilient. At 18 months, participants in the recurring group could handle an emergency expense of $400. Lump sum participants reported savings of greater than $500 and ability to handle a $400 emergency expense at 6, 12, and 18 months. Families have better access to healthy food. Recurring payments significantly improved recipients' food security 6 months after the first disbursement. Parental connections with children grew deeper, and household chaos reduced significantly. Children living in households of both recurring and lump sum recipients were more likely to improve their grades at school or enroll in AP courses compared to children of parents in the control group. The bottom line, those who are struggling to make ends meet know exactly what they need to do for their families to better their lives, and we should trust them to do it. So what now? Costs in New Jersey are higher than ever. We must call on our legislators in Trenton and Washington, D.C. to implement more guaranteed income programs, re-examine baby bonds, and expand access to and increase similar policies, such as the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit. Let us set aside ideological differences and follow what works. Unrestricted cash policies work for families, and we just proved it in Newark. To learn more about our movement, visit www.newjerseyequity.org.
Can we go back a few seconds? That was a very sensual embrace between the Democratic donkey and the Republican elephant. I just want to leave on that.
No, I already closed that down. But noted, duly noted.
Yeah, maybe you can bring it back for a second in the edited version. I don't know if that's hard.
Yeah, I can.
That really
I can take a screen cap and throw that back up.
That really stuck out to me. Yeah, cool.
One thing I liked about that one, and I think they mentioned this during the video, but the control group had 3% homelessness rate. That was unimpacted. It was just say that the whole time. The frequent group, $250 every other week, had 0%. So, and it was started at 3%. So there did seem to be a elimination of homelessness for that group. So it was like one of those pilots that wasn't looking at homelessness.
How long was it?
That's
How
what we
long was
saw.
the pilot?
That was 2 years.
And it also means that no one fell into homelessness as well, which is a thing people often ignore.
Yeah, it was helping prevent too.
Yeah. I wonder what the numbers are. If there was 3% homelessness, if you had however many people it was, what would be normally the likelihood that someone would fall into homelessness out of that group in 2 years?
Yeah.
I wanted to mention, while we're still kind of talking about the conference, that I'm sort of excited. We're going out and showing more stuff in preparation for launching our projects to the world, at the end of this year or early next year. But if there are people in New Orleans, we're going to be presenting at the Netroots Nation conference in early August. And if anyone's going to the Global BN conference, Basic Income Earth Network, in Brazil, in Rio, in late August, we'll be there too. So
if anyone's finds their way to Brazil, then you should know.
I mean, there's a guy named Tiago that just posted. That sounds maybe Brazilian. Anyway, Tiago just asked when Comingle's coming out, and like I said a little earlier, but we're going to launch it for internal beta testing, so for few people with actual money flowing. We're looking to do that in July. And then however long it takes to do the kicking the tires and fixing the bugs, hopefully a few months, we'll send a call out to invite 10 or 20 beta testers, try to grow it up to 50 or 100 for another few months. And then when we're really confident that we can scale it up, we have a plan to begin a pilot program that'll go for up at least 2 years, up to 10,000 people. And then whenever along that process, we're like, okay, we know everything we need to know to scale it up nationally and not crash or be too expensive, then we'll do that too. So I'm hoping sometime next year we get to that point where we can just open it up to the world. But we're officially launching Comingle in the next month or so for the very smallest basic income ever done while we work out the kinks.
Yeah, just a handful of us at the start to make sure we can work out the bugs.
Yeah. And then Justin is asking, have you guys talked about people who are neurodivergent? I haven't seen too much about it in the UBI world. I don't know if we talk about it a ton. I mean, we talk about disability. We talk about just to each their own, and UBI means something different for everybody, right? And really, it's about empowering whatever potential a person has, as well as sort of adding resilience to whatever challenges people have. Tiago's from Portugal. At least he speaks Portuguese, so he might understand more at the conference than I would. So yeah, back to the neurodivergent thing, as I neurodivergently got distracted. I would be curious to, rather than talk about it more speculatively, to ask what people think who are neurodivergent in some capacity. What would it mean in your day-to-day challenges, opportunities? Like, what strengths would it empower? What shortfalls might it have? I'm curious.
Yeah, we've never had a guest, even, when we were doing the X shows that was audio only. We never had one focused on purely on neurodivergence. And yeah, we did cover kind of disability and stuff. But yeah, along those lines, I would just say that universal basic income is really the only program that, because it's fully universal and provides that support for everybody, that it really is a maximum flexibility for all the ways that people would use it, all the ways people behave and think and respond to things. There's just no programs out there otherwise. Can you imagine something that like you can only apply for if you qualify as being neurodivergent, and like how many people who are neurodivergent would never actually pass the tests for neurodivergence? And I'm sure that they would provide some like benefits or something, because like you can't trust people, so it would be, I don't know, like some amount of food, or healthcare or education, or whatever, trying to like help people with who are neurodivergent. And like is that what they need? uh like it's up
Yeah,
to them to decide what they need.
but yeah, everyone needs money, and the thing that's great about UBI is it's sort of steps around categorizing. Like, I mean, for one thing, I think pretty much, or most of the people I work with in the UBI movement seem pretty somewhere on the spectrum, myself included. And it's sort of irrelevant to a degree, because it's just everybody needs power. And so,
Yeah, I would
yeah,
say it's irrelevant to a degree, and also like from the disability angle, I think it's important where you can be like just barely disabled, as in, maybe you're are just like this really kind of light level that's constant, or maybe it's just like really infrequent. So maybe you're just like totally, you have full ability for, 6 months out of the year. And then all of a sudden you have issues for like a week. And then, it's another 6 months. Like
right.
that's the kind of thing that UBI can help with that no other program can, because you can't possibly apply for some program that helps you like 1 week out of the year and the rest not. And you never know when you're going to need that.
Right.
UBI is there all the time.
And I don't want to conflate neurodivergence with disability, but there is
Yeah.
places where it overlaps, like someone who is bipolar. If you have or manic depressive, if you qualify for disability, it basically says you have to basically hide out in your basement for the rest of your life and never do anything, because
Yeah.
if you try to work, we will cut off your benefits. And people with manic depressive disorder, there's times where they can and love to and want to work and contribute, and there's times where they can't and they need to focus on self-care. And why would we shut them down in the times when they can, in order for them to have to be able to stay safe in the times when they can't? We want to encourage everyone to bring as much as they have to give.
I guess one more question about Comingle too here. How like is it going to go international?
That's sort of a
It's entirely up to you guys.
it's a gotcha question. Like, we really want to go international and grow it as big as we can. So the real question is, how likely is it to grow enough in scale in the US to like allow us to then go international? Like, it has to get self-sustaining, and we need to have the money to like start branching out and building out the infrastructure. So yeah,
Yeah,
what do you
really
think? How
the
likely
the
is it to
question
work?
is, if it's a big success in the US, then it's so much more likely to be international after that. But like if it flounders in the US and we just really can't like find um, net payers to like want to be a part of it and like want to support the rest of the group and themselves in times of need, then it's going to be really tough to do that. But we're
Yeah.
really, it's about making the case here in the US and starting here.
But it's very front and center on our vision board, is like, okay, once it's established here, we can maybe pop it up in some of the easier other places to prop it up, like UK, Canada, Germany, like other places that have like a banking system already in place, that we could just do a couple little tweaks and start growing it more and more. And all of this time, the revenue is being redirected and growing towards expanding and including more people, where at a certain point, we start moving into the places that are much more difficult to set it up, because they don't have like a sort of plug and play banking infrastructure, like Give Directly's work in Africa takes a lot more investment because they don't have the banking system. They have to figure out how to get people the money through their cell phones through an alternate currency, and they have to have people on the ground to like communicate it and make sure that it's trusted, because it's where the hell are these people coming from with this money? But if we get big enough, I would love to be able to, and not only set up these programs with the extra expenses they have and like work with Give Directly, work with others, but also to endow. Like there's a lot of extra money from like a little percentage of, more prosperous nations' money flows. And we're looking at a country where the average income is much lower and they can't actually provide among themselves a very significant size basic income to actually subsidize it. So now we've set it up in these places where there can be an international flow that's reducing international inequality as well. So like long term, why not commingle global? But the likelihood, who knows?
The next thing I wanted to talk about is something really significant just happened last night. And this is straight out of Conrad's State, by the way. But so, the big news on today, June 25th, is that Zohran Mamdani won, or is likely to have won the primary. Cuomo actually conceded last night. So for those who aren't familiar, Mamdani, Democratic Socialist, supported by AOC, Bernie Sanders. I think that shows like the direction potentially where we're going is in regards to like Democratic establishment and, those who are just sick and tired of like the status quo of that, who are really wanting people to step up and support like big changes, improvements in supporting people, improving people's lives. So we'll see. I was curious, has he ever supported or said anything about universal basic income? And I learned that he's in the local government there. And so there's this bill 90, and here's the summary of it. This bill establishes a reentry assistance program that provides financial support to eligible incarcerated individuals upon their release from state correctional facilities. The program will offer a monthly stipend of at least $425 for up to 6 months, with a maximum total payout of $2,550 per individual. To be eligible, an incarcerated person must have served at least 6 months and not previously received funds from the program. The initial payment will be made immediately upon release in cash or check form, with subsequent monthly payments processed by the Community Supervision Agency. And so if you look at the sponsors here, one of the co-sponsors is Mamdani. So I don't know. I haven't seen anything else about this. I haven't seen him say anything about universal basic income. I haven't seen him refer to the pilots in New York. But it appears that he's at least open, and supportive of unconditional cash in certain circumstances, especially this one. And if he's supportive of this, then maybe he's supportive of others too. I would assume that seems likely. But yeah, it's very interesting to.
I would think so,
discovered
just in his general vibe, that he would be amenable to the idea, but maybe not someone who will push it. I still think we need to lay the groundwork and light the fire under political asses to do stuff. But there's a couple of red flags in that particular proposal that are okay, so up to this amount for up to this long. It's how do they determine how much people get? So it sort of implies a dose of paternalism and conditions and things like that. But
yeah, I think it was. I think the payment is $425, and the up to means that you continually don't recidivate. That you're doing what you need to do as someone who's been who has exited prison. So I don't think it's new steps. I think it's typical steps. But as long as you're following those typical steps as far as exiting prison, then you will continue to get that money. But yeah, it's just 6 months is the maximum. Certainly it's way better than getting $50 just on the time that you exit, and then that's it. I don't know what New York's actually standard is. That's
I don't,
Florida's, but
yeah, I don't know what New York does. I think the Florida example we know is one of the worst ones, but in
yeah,
general, like you can come out of jail with nothing. You can come out of jail with debt. Like they charge you a bill for your stay,
yeah,
and then you have to pay it down when you have no income. And if you don't have enough money to pay it down, you go back to jail. Like Kevin
yeah.
put it.
And what you do is you commit crimes. You know, you go into the illegal economy to earn that money. You know, because
Yeah,
you got to pay it, and so no one will hire you, and so you do something that's illegal to get that money,
well,
and you get caught. Boom, you're back in prison again.
if not having money is a crime, if you can be too poor to be free, then there's a catch-22. There's no way to not be a criminal if just not having money is a crime, you know? So what do you do? It's sort of an absurdist, like, I can imagine like looking back and, 100 years or whatever, 1,000 years at the way people used to do things and thinking of it very similarly to the way I think about like stuff from the Dark Ages. It's just, we accept it now and we think we're a modern society, but some of the stuff that we just take for granted is bonkers. It's so stupid.
Yeah. Along the lines of legislation, I want to make sure that we covered this one too. And I'd also say, so people, you can watch this on the UBI Works channel. They do a great job of finding clips to post on their channel, that are related to basic income. So you can watch this whole thing. It's about 39 minutes long. We're not going to watch the whole thing. That's way too long for us to cover. But I do want to cover just like the beginning few minutes of this. And what this is about is this is Senator Kim Pate in Canada doing like the second reading of the new introduction of the basic income bill in Canada. So, for those who don't know, there was a previous bill. It was, I think it was S-233. And that didn't make it through. It was voted down and it didn't succeed in the last session, and it's been reintroduced this session. I think they plan to keep doing that. And this bill too is not about like introducing basic income in Canada. If it passed, it wouldn't be like Canada now has basic income. It's that if it passed, then Canada would put resources into researching options for introducing basic income, what that kind of policy would look like. And then that report would be completed and presented to their Congress. And then that's something that then they could use to come up with a basic income bill that would be actual basic income. So, there's a lot of misinformation there. Like last time, people were freaking out who were anti-UBI, who were like, oh my gosh, you have to stop this because they're about to implement basic income. And that's not true. It's really just kind of a report. But Kim Pate does a great job in this presentation of talking about basic income. So let's just watch like a little bit of it.
Honorable Senator Pate moves that this bill be read a second time. On debate, Senator Pate.
Honourable colleagues, the latest research reveals that Canada spends upwards of $92 billion per year paying for measures that keep people stuck in poverty instead of investing in approaches that would allow them to rebound. Canada spends billions policing access and monitoring recipients of social assistance schemes that provides too little. We also spend billions on emergency health treatment for people who lack housing, health care, and food security, as well as the resources to treat preventable health conditions, and on jail cells filled with those who are poor, homeless, and dealing with mental health and addiction issues. We lose billions in undeveloped economic capacity and on tax revenue from those we have ignored instead of including and empowering. It is difficult to fathom the full human, social, and financial implications of poverty. Poverty is inextricably interconnected with and diminishes every aspect of Canada's economy. The impacts on society, health, and humanity are massive. Too many existing financial services and systems are experienced as uncertain, unreliable, exhausting, and demoralizing, reinforcing harmful and discriminatory stereotypes that wrongfully label as less capable and less trustworthy the people whom Canada chooses to abandon to poverty, homelessness, and related crises. Speaking today on the traditional unceded, unsurrendered, and unreturned territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe, I acknowledge that those our governments choose to abandon are disproportionately women, Indigenous and Black peoples, and others who are racialized, as well as persons with disabilities. This chamber has long known that Canada can and must do better. For more than 50 years, across group and party lines, senators have advanced the idea of cash transfers sufficient to live and available to anyone living in poverty, and as a smart, meaningful, and cost-effective way to spend less on poverty and invest more in people in ways that benefit all of us. In the 1971 report of the Special Committee on Poverty, Senator Kroll and his colleagues pressed for immediate action on a form of basic income because they, quote, felt the poor could not be asked to wait years for the help they so urgently need, end quote. That was more than half a century ago. Since then, children in poverty have grown into adults and now seniors living in poverty. How much longer are we prepared to ask Canadians to wait for food, for shelter, for treatment? How many more nights, weeks, months, years, generations? How many more lives sacrificed? Guaranteed livable basic income is not a new idea. As I reintroduce Bill S-206, a proposal for a national framework for implementing guaranteed livable income, I want to explore some of the reasons why Canadians of today support this bill. I also want to delineate what we mean by guaranteed livable income, debunk some persistent myths and misconceptions, and discuss why now, as we face growing threats to Canada's economy and sovereignty from our neighbour to the south, is the right time to move forward with a guaranteed livable basic income. I want to acknowledge first, however, Canadians' collective work on this issue and our collective work in this chamber. I thank so many of you who similarly advocate the implementation of a basic income. We especially appreciate members of the Finance Committee for their study of this former incarnation of this bill, Bill S-233. I recognize the vital incremental steps made at the federal level, driven by tireless advocacy from community groups since the bill was last introduced. In particular, in response to provincial progressive conservative government proposal to launch a guaranteed livable basic income, the federal government has initiated a working group on this topic with the PEI government. First Nations leaders on the island, including Chief Darlene Bernard, Chief of Lennox Island First Nation and co-chair of the Epiquate Assembly of Councils, have demonstrated incredible leadership on this issue. I want to acknowledge as well the work of past and present PEI Senate colleagues across groups. At a national level, alongside existing forms of basic income for families with children and older Canadians, the government has introduced the Canada Disability Benefit, though much work remains to ensure that this program meets its promises and evolves beyond its current limited form. Colleagues, many of us are seeing in our home communities the local and grassroots efforts driving support for guaranteed livable basic income. Many of us come from one of the multitude of municipalities across Canada that have passed resolutions in support of basic income. Ottawa is one of the most recent to join the call. Community and civil society advocates of guaranteed livable basic income range from local health units and health associations to the Canadian Public Health Association, from local unions to the Public Service Alliance of Canada, from local women's shelters to Women's Shelters Canada, the Women's Legal Education and Action Fund, and the National Association of Women of the Law, from local food banks to the National Put Food Banks Out of Business campaign to the Dietitians of Canada, from local churches to the Anglican Church of Canada, the United Church of Canada, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Canada, and the late Pope. This chamber benefited from the leadership of Senator Kroll in the 1970s and the conservative liberal dynamic duo of Senator Segal and Senator Eggleton in the 2000s and 2010s. Decades apart, their work resulted in two outstanding in-depth Senate studies of poverty, each with guaranteed livable basic income as its central recommendation. In 2020, the National Finance Committee, chaired by Conservative Senator Mockler, a formidable advocate for those in poverty, added to this history a recommendation for priority government consideration of guaranteed livable basic income. That same year, 50 senators, the majority of the chamber at that time, signed their names to a letter to the Prime Minister with a similar proposal. Guaranteed livable income is a natural fit for this chamber, an intersection of our duties to represent marginalized or so-called minority groups and to take a long-term perspective on Canada's best interests and the well-being of all Canadians. Today, with 1 in 4 Canadians unable to afford essentials, with 85% of Canadians living paycheck to paycheck, and knowing the toll that this precariousness takes on Canadian communities and economies, I urge as honourable colleagues to ensure this chamber plays its part yet again. We can't.
Okay, let's just stop there. Yeah, I mean, gives like a whole summary, gives a lot of, ties it to poverty, ties it to, how much they're spending, how much they'd save. I'm sure at some point she mentions, the fact that they had their analysis by like their version of the Congressional Budget Office. I think it was the Parliamentary Budget Office, and they found that you could do a guaranteed basic income there that would have like a net cost of $4 billion and reduce poverty there by it's 40%. And like the way that math works out is if they're spending $80 billion on poverty every year, then it's like, they come out ahead by like 32 billion by spending 4 billion more. And I mean, that's like, if you're a politician, that's the kind of stuff that should really get your interest, like that's why Republicans and stuff here in the US should be looking at this as a way of saving money. And I hope that at some point they do.
Yeah. I have a very different takeaway for this particular video today, which is it's making me think back to the neurodivergent question. Like for whatever reason, and exacerbated by social media and all my different projects and stuff, and the caffeine I took today, like I'm feeling extra neurodivergent today. I'm like having a really hard time focusing. Like I'm sitting there and it's like Kim Pate. I wonder if she's French and it used to be pate. And like her great grandfather used to make pate. And then I lose a minute and I'm coming back. I'm like, focus. And like when I watch back these episodes, I'm pretty good and functional, but like I'll watch back and I'll be like, oh, Josh or Scott just said something really poignant. I totally missed it because I had to get all the thoughts out of my brain and I was waiting my turn. And, for me then, speaking personally, like a UBI that kind of connects everyone and empowers everyone to bring their best sort of takes the pressure off of anyone to like be the hero, right? We have this like hero worship sort of culture where, Bernie's going to save us, Elon's going to save us, whatever. And it's like I said before, the secret sauce of humanity is collaboration. And if everyone can bring something, like a lot of people in this room and the people in the chat are bringing up thoughts that we're not thinking of, like bringing all these voices into the room and putting it through the big sieve of human society and collaboration. All of a sudden now we don't need like several great thinkers or whatever to like push humanity forward despite itself. Like we can all participate and the pressure's off. And so for me, it's like that idea allows me to like forgive myself a bit for when I'm unable to follow. Like I know everything Kim Pate is saying, basically, I'm just glad she's saying it well. But the fact that I can't focus, like I feel like you focus a lot better, Scott, in certain situations than I'm able to, or on certain days. And it feels like a weakness of mine. Like I have my strengths, but yeah, I didn't mean to divert from Kim, but
I probably just eat this up more than other people too. I'm sure like some people watching this will just be like, well, that was boring. And, it's just like, well, I just think it's exciting for someone to actually stand up in Congress and be actually communicating this well,
right,
and seriously discussing it. And everyone else in that room is like seriously considering it. And, this is like serious person. This is the Overton window in Canada is wide open for basic income. It's not considered to be like some unrealistic thing.
But you definitely
totally
have
possible.
maybe a more tolerance for more boring things based on the ideas than almost anybody. But I think like I also have a weakness in that area of like everything to a degree is boring because my head is worrying all the time. And like when I'm out walking my dog, I'm like muttering through conversations and things that I'm having, and like I'm one of those guys. So yeah, I think this question is going to keep coming back to me as I fidget through life. like, what does UBI mean for like neurodivergence and the whole spectrum? Like, I think it's a fun question.
Right, here's another basic income pilot results video. But this is about the In Her Hands pilot in Georgia. And this is just another short one.
As the cost of living keeps climbing, one Atlanta mom says a little extra cushion made all the difference.
It helped me through cosmetology school to be able to get my license, to be able to provide more services, to provide more means for my family.
Brittany Harrod is a full-time hairstylist, a mother, and a determined entrepreneur in College Park. Like many women, she says she was doing all she could, but still falling short. That's where the Georgia Resilience Opportunity Fund's In Her Hands program stepped in.
650 women across 3 communities in Georgia received a 2-year guaranteed income, meaning no strings attached income support. The women in our program on average have 1 to 2 children and make about $14,000 a year. So they are facing pretty significant economic strain.
Brittany was part of that first cohort and says with that support, she's growing her career.
I'm able to provide more services, which brings more funds into my home. It allowed me to be able to grow and elevate my business and make it more of a business rather than just something that I was able to do on the side.
And showing her daughters what's possible.
What does that mean to you as a mom?
It means everything to me as a mom. It shows her that we can persevere through a lot, that we can be entrepreneurs. We're not limited to what we can do.
There are people out there who say, who gets a handout? Why don't these people just go to work or get an education to make more money? What do you say to people who have that viewpoint on a program like this?
What I say is that most people are working. And when we think about a lot of people in our communities, many folks are actually working sometimes 2, 3 jobs, very entrepreneurial, sometimes have that side hustle. They're really trying to make it work. But unfortunately, it oftentimes just simply doesn't add up.
Grow Fund founder Hope Wallensack says she started the organization to show big change like Brittany's can start with bold ideas.
We have tried incremental change for a long time. We should be willing to explore every solution to ensure that our neighbors can meet their basic needs and even thrive and access opportunity.
As Brittany takes her financial future into her own hands, she's not looking back.
It helped me elevate from where I was to where I am now. And I plan to continue to grow.
For a closer look, Aisha Howard, 11 Alive News.
Yeah, the impact on entrepreneurship is just so frequent and large. Like if you want to start a business, it's going to cost money. And, maybe, said that she was a hairstylist. Either way, like, a lot of states require you to pay money to actually be able to do that. So that's like a barrier. There's being able to pay for the equipment. There's like money to start up an actual business, all that stuff. And basic income enables that. And also when it's universal, then you've got more customers. You've got people who actually can afford to pay for that service.
But I also think there's a more nuanced version of this too. People always think about like someone who wants to start a business, has never been able to do it, can't afford it, whatever, can't risk it. But there's also this thing that I've sort of witnessed with Bootstraps, with other data, that there's like the accidental business creation. Like it's not just people walking around with a great idea that if only. There's a lot of people where it's like the idea never even occurs because it's not even possible, right? And we had several, or your people are not freed up to think creatively, right? They didn't even know they would have an idea. So we had one couple like sort of stumble into a business in the middle of COVID. They were like, yeah, let's just start sewing some masks together at home for our friends, and that turned into like a little business, right? They're like, oh, people love this and people are ordering it. Let's get more stuff. And it just kind of happened out of nowhere, where if they were scrambling to pay rent, it wouldn't have happened. We had someone else who graduated with a degree in 2020 over Zoom, and a completely empty job market, and like had invested in some hobbies that turned into a business, right? It was all of a sudden like, well, let's go to that. I'm pretty good at that now. I've got some equipment. And now she's fucking thriving at that business that was no part of her degree or whatever, that, if she hadn't just sort of pursued it without thoughts of a career, that wouldn't be who she is now, right? So I don't just wonder about all the brilliant geniuses with great ideas who want to do it and have to decide not to, but I wonder about all the people who will find that potential in themselves when they're just given a little more bandwidth and risk tolerance.
I think this is related to that. This is some more recent news. And, so for those who don't know, there has been a basic income for artists pilot going on in Ireland. And that was just extended. It was supposed to be a 2-year pilot, and they're adding 6 months to it. Like the reasoning behind that extension too is to kind of give them space to figure out how to make this permanent in some way. So yeah, the pilot scheme was awarded to 2,000 artists in 2022, paying 325 euros per month. 9,000 artists and creative workers applied. Artist pay was lower by a third than the average for all their employees. Clearly artists are, especially need this so they can focus on their art. And, as one of the results from this, what we've seen so far is that artists are able to spend more time focusing on their arts. Let's see, here's some of the key findings. The first year assessment found that recipients were significantly better able to make ends meet and experience a notable reduction in enforced deprivation, allowing them to afford basic necessities like heating, clothing, and social participation. Since its inception, it's proved to be a success, with recipients reporting greater living standards, reduced depression and stress, and a higher quality of creative work output. And the recipients were more productive, spending on average almost 8 weekly hours more on the creative practice and completing an average of 3.6 more new works in the past 6 months. According to the latest government report, artists and people who work in the creative industries experience extreme deprivation in their everyday lives. So this is, great news to see. I hope that Ireland is able to make this permanent, and especially because, we're seeing automation already directly impacting artists in particular.
Right. And like along the lines of what I was talking about, how many people basically saying, how many people will like, oh, shit, I'm a business person. How many people would be like, oh shit, I'm actually an artist, and let's see where this goes. It just creates that space. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
The thing you just highlighted, I didn't pay attention to UBI before, but AI job automation is the most scary topic. Rick Sanders. I did want to get back to that a little bit. I mean, we talk about AI a lot. That was another fun thing in the big conference, was that report that was presented, the AI
right.
index report. You want to talk about that some?
Yeah, I should bring that up.
Maybe put the link, because it's got a fun like interactive tool where you can see just how fucked you are.
Yeah, no, I should totally talk about that. But yeah, that'll take me just a little bit of time. So instead, let's watch a video about this AI impacts first. We've got 2 videos to watch from people who know a lot about this.
Hey, Peter. My name is Mark Donovan, founder of the Denver Basic Income Project, and my moonshot is to create affordable living as a service, housing, food, energy, data, and transportation for $250 a month by the end of the decade. Vinod, you started by asking, how will we pay people in the future? And I haven't heard anyone answer that yet. Yesterday, Kathy Wood said that technology will create more jobs than it displaces, which has been true historically, but I've been assuming this will not be true with AI and humanoid robots. What do you think about that, and what is the role of universal basic income in the economy of the future?
Job displacement will happen. In 2016, I wrote a paper on this. I think it was in Forbes or Fortune, I forget. It was a long 5,000-word treatise on that. I do a lot of writing. And my view was AI will lead to great abundance, great productivity growth, great GDP growth, everything economists love, and increasing income disparity. That was about 8 or 10 years ago. I wrote that piece. And I do think we will have to deal with that issue through policy. And that's why I think societies will make different choices in different countries. It'll be a country by country choice of what we allow. How do we plan to share the abundance more broadly? I don't think the current capitalist system, unmodified, will work in that environment.
Interesting.
So I always say I'm a techno-optimist like other people, but with care and caring. Care being on safety, which is also going to be an issue, and caring for those left behind.
Thank you, Vinod.
Thank you. We will have to consider UBI in some form. AI will cause great abundance, great GDP growth, great productivity growth, all the things economists measure, and increasing income disparity. I think we will have issues, but we will eliminate other issues. There's pros and cons to everything. It's very hard to predict how complex systems behave. And it's very hard for me to sit here and say I have a clear vision of how that happens. But I, for one, am addicted to learning. I know other people addicted to producing music. All of those are reasonable things for people to find meaning in, or personal meaning. Passions will emerge, and I think if people have very early in their life the ability to pursue passions, I hope that adds the meaning human beings will need. And in some sense, that's what I was talking about in 2000 when I said we'll have to redefine what it means to be human. Your assembly line job won't define you for your whole life.
Man, this guy's got a. Anyone have his phone number? He's got a. He's got to, join forces with us.
Yeah, I like to. So he mentioned in that first part of it that he wrote this post like 10 years ago, and yeah, I read that post. I bookmarked it. I added him to my database of people who have expressed interest in support for basic income, and I've never actually spoken to him in person. I think maybe may have interacted like once or twice on Twitter like years ago, but he's a Silicon Valley investor. Khosla Ventures is his investing firm, and he certainly seems like he should be, someone who's putting some money behind this. Like instead of just saying that
Well,
this is
next
like a
time,
future idea.
Next time we're doing a thing in San Francisco or the Bay, we should try to find a way to invite him.
Yeah, I definitely want to sit down with them.
When you make people cry a little, that tends to open up their interest in helping. There was something I noticed. He cued into the language letter jumbling part of my neurodiversity. He kept saying income despair, and in particular accurate income disparity. And I thought
income disparity. Yeah.
So income disparity.
Yeah.
Is how it hit me, and I think that's maybe there's something there. Maybe there's some legs behind that.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, despair. I get it. That's good. Here's the report that we were just talking about. So, yeah, this was debuted like during the Basic Income Conference. It was co-created by the National Science Foundation and the Gerald Huff Fund for Humanity.
And a quick shout out to the founder, Giselle Huff. Her birthday was like 2 days ago, so send her some likes online or something like that.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Giselle.
Happy birthday, Giselle. Yeah, and here's this report. You can find it. You can go to fundforhumanity.org, and you can find the link for it there. This took like a year or more to prepare, going job by job, using how much like existing AI can impact people and jobs. And it came up with jobs will be eliminated, new jobs will be created, people will be displaced. So what is the kind of the average displacement? And the headline figure was that 25% of jobs would be displaced in the next 3 years. So people may think that that's extreme, and others may think that that's actually not extreme enough. I think that's probably entirely possible. And again, it's not to say that people will lose their jobs and not be able to find anything else, but it is to say that there will be a period of time that everyone will experience, or not everyone, but a significant number of people will experience where they are unable to find a job, they lose their job, and they're out there looking for another one. They're experiencing the safety net as it exists. Maybe it's harder to find a job. Maybe it takes longer to find a job. Maybe they have to go back and learn new skills to get a job. It's we can't just go into this and, cover our eyes and plug our ears in regards to the potential for this. That's maybe it won't happen, and maybe we just won't see this level of displacement, but maybe it will happen, and we should be prepared for that to happen. And so one of the things that this does, you can actually interact with it like with a chat bot, and you can calculate your score. So I don't know, just want to have some fun with this. Maybe chat, do you want to ask any examples of, what industries did this say this could impact, and what the risk score would be? I know one in particular that I think will be strongly impacted, that I haven't looked up, but I would think so. And it's like, say, tech support or customer support. Let's see what that comes up with. It says, as a tech support professional, your job is a moderate to high disruption score of 56%. This means tech support roles after significant risk of being automated or replaced by AI, especially as AI systems become more capable of handling troubleshooting and customer queries. A low score is good, low risk, and a high score is bad, high risk. Here's a graph showing the disruption score for tech support normalized between 1 to 100. So, at 56%, it's greater than the odds of flipping a coin that if you currently have that job, then you may be displaced from that job within the next 3 years.
Let's roll through a few. First of all, selfishly, UBI advocate. I assume we'll have great job security in this economic dystopia.
Okay, let's see if that even comes up with something.
Is it smart enough?
Yeah. Not specifically listed. Close related jobs are public relations specialists and fundraising managers. Yeah, I don't know about that. High disruption scores of 57.8% for public relations specialists and fundraising managers.
Well, that's a hard one. How
Yeah.
about teachers?
Teachers. Let's say like high school teachers, elementary school teachers, or just teachers in general. All right. High school teachers. Several types of high school teachers: math, science, English, social studies, special education. Could you specify which one? Okay, so we got to break this down.
English. Let's just do English.
All right.
That's very granular.
Low disruption score of 31.2%.
That's not that low.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like super.
31% likelihood of losing
low.
a job doesn't seem. I guess it's all relative.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not saying that 1 out of 3 teachers will be displaced. It's more about the probability of that.
How's that different?
Well, like how, like when Trump won in 2016, I remember like on the day of the election, the odds of his winning were around like 30%. And so, like you're not going to run that 3 times, although even if you do run it 3 times, it's not 100% probability of doing that, of him winning. But, it's a possibility that it could happen. It's not like.
So, I mean, for me, I'm like, if there's 100 teachers, does this mean 31? Because we're not just running it once, we're running it across an entire economy for all the people who have this job.
Yeah, I don't think that'd be the same thing.
In the scenario where it happens, like the 1 in 3, then what percentage of teachers would be displaced? Like you would think that's another number of like how many would still keep their jobs? Because you would think it wouldn't be like all of a sudden, oops, no more of that job, period. Except in some cases, like call center workers might completely. Let's look at that
right.
one.
Yeah, well, that's what I kind of meant by tech support. So I think it'd be pretty similar, but sure, call center jobs. And by the way, like this, a news piece actually just came out recently about like a new call center technology that's like better than like over 90% or like a very significant percentage of call center workers. Like it's already reached the point of being highly effective. Yeah. Call center jobs, high disruption score of 59.6%.
Well, when I look at the chat, that even this one for that's just for this, but especially for like the chat GPTs and stuff, and the fact that they can mimic voices and sound human, it's like intuitively, it's like calls like all of this stuff is already, the technology is there to be way better than any customer service I've ever talked to.
I was just listening to an ElevenLabs, like the new version of that, and it was really good. It's not the one I was talking about in regards to the newer technology that was audio, but um, that article was talking about how effective it was. But then the ElevenLabs new version, it sounded really good. What I can do is I can find that again. We'll play another video first, and while that's playing, I'll find that the AI news piece. But yeah, here's another person who really knows what they're talking about AI and mentioning basic income.
Demis Hassabis, welcome back to Hard Fork.
Thanks for having me again.
A lot has happened since the last time you were on the show. Most notably, you won a Nobel Prize. Congrats on that.
Congrats.
Some people are starting to look at the job market, especially for recent college graduates, and worry that we're already starting to see signs of AI-powered job loss. Anecdotally, I talked to young people who a couple years ago might have been interested in going into fields like tech or consulting or finance or law, who are just saying, like, I don't know that these jobs are going to be around much longer. A recent article in The Atlantic wondered if we're starting to see AI competing with college graduates for these entry-level positions. Do you have a view on that?
Maybe it's starting to appear now. I don't think there's any hard numbers on that yet. At least I haven't seen it. I think for now, I mostly see these as tools that are augmenting what you can do and what you can achieve.
I mean, I think the tension there is that you're right. These tools do give people so much more leverage, but they also reduce the need for big teams of people doing certain things. I was talking to someone recently who said, they had been at a data science company in their previous job that had 75 people working on some kind of data science tasks. And now they're at a startup that has one person doing the work that used to require 75 people.
What normally happens with big sort of new technology shifts, which is that some jobs get disrupted. In theory, it should be those other 70 people, whatever, could be creating new startup ideas. Maybe it's going to be less of these bigger teams and more smaller teams of very powered by AI tools.
I think there are even more people now who are actively antagonistic toward AI. And I think maybe one reason is they hear folks at the big labs saying pretty loudly, eventually this is going to replace your job. And most people just think, well, I don't want that, you know? So I'm curious if you feel like we have seen some use cases, enough use cases to start to shift public opinion.
Well, I think we're working on those things. They take time to develop. I think a kind of universal assistant would be one of those things if it was kind of really yours and working for you effectively. So technology that works for you. I think that this is what economists and other experts should be working on: is does everyone manage a suite of fleet of agents that are doing things for you, and including potentially earning you money or building you things? Does that become part of the normal job process? I could imagine that in the next 4 or 5 years. I also think that as we get closer to AGI and we make breakthroughs in, we probably talked about last time, material sciences, energy, fusion, these sorts of things helped by AI. We should start getting to a position in society where we're getting towards what I would call radical abundance, where there's a lot of resources to go around. And then again, it's more of a political question of how would you distribute that in a fair way, right? So I've heard this term like universal high income, something like that. I think is going to probably be, good and necessary.
It's interesting. He said something funny that was like an indirect UBI sort of a thing, maybe, or AI dividend sort of a thing, where he's like imagining a suite of agents that everyone gets that can even just earn you money. And now all of a sudden we've all got like some program running in the background that's like doing some sort of work that earns us money. It's like 3 steps to just give us money. Like what? Just like it's odd.
It's money with extra steps. It can be good for them. Like it makes sense if you're creating robots to say, hey, you know what? We should actually have the government buy everyone a robot. It's like, yeah, that'd be great for you. But let's actually just do basic income instead. So let's see. Here's the article that I found that I was just talking about. If only new AI agents hit 99% accuracy and customers can't tell they're not human.
That seems like a higher rate of accuracy than must be the case.
Yeah,
for
I
actual.
think so. And it reduced response times by more than 70%. And that's like the key point is that, if you're talking to some AI voice, and they're like delayed some amount of time, then you're like, okay, this is definitely like automated. But if you can cut that down so there's no real delay and you can also be highly effective, then
I mean,
you
yeah,
solve the problem.
I would think in terms of delay, you're comparing like computational power that you have versus like the number of people on staff. And I would feel like if you just have like a large enough bunch of RAM or whatever it is to run your program, you can keep up with the demand of pretty much any sort of customer service thing, whereas the human version of that is being put on hold.
Yeah, and there's always room for at least one person to be there, depending on what kind of call capacity, how many people are calling in. But if there's a team of 500 people right now handling this, and let's say average wait time is 5 minutes or something, then you introduced this kind of really effective AI handling this, and you could definitely reduce that because also you don't want, you reduce wait times to 0 seconds. You've also just got like a bunch of people twiddling their thumbs waiting around. So you don't need that many people, but you can reduce it to, I don't know, 20 people, 50 people, 5 people, whatever. You're really looking at what kind of wait time you still have and being able to transfer over to someone who can handle stuff that the AI can't. But I think that's something that people miss when they're looking at automation of jobs. They'll say, oh, you can't automate all the call center jobs, even if it's really great. It's like, okay, sure, but you can automate 90% of them to the point where, there's a lot fewer people can handle this.
Yeah, and Rick in the chat says, I don't see any new jobs created by AI, but I see productivity gains in existing jobs that will allow everyone else to be fired. I mean, even if new jobs are created, like I could see all kinds of surprising things happen, right? But when you look at things macroeconomically, it's, as a society, it's like whether or not there's new jobs or job loss or whatever, it's like the larger number. Is there enough jobs to go around? I would say there already isn't, and it's already been like an increasingly scarce market, the labor market, and this threatens to make it much more so, right? So we have to have a different set of solutions or add to the way that we get people resources in general.
Yeah, all this stuff you've obtained skills in some certain sector, and maybe there's some other sector to go to, but like it takes time. You've got to skill up, you've got to learn something new. And these people who lose their jobs and can't find jobs in these jobs that they were even really good at and really, people really valued them, they shouldn't have to jump through hoops. They shouldn't fall through the safety net, like all this stuff.
Yeah.
Should make it easier.
Well, and people so often just focus on the money of like, okay, you invested this much in school or whatever. But the time really, we come back to this a lot, but time is the most precious resource. And if you invested 5 years of your life or 10 years of your life into having this ability to do this thing, and then all of a sudden it's sucked away, and then you got to invest another amount of time, it's like, what are you even doing, right? It's not just logical, it's incredibly demoralizing. We need to have an answer to this for people.
Yeah, and the existing system judges people based on their like how much their worth is to society based on the work that they're doing, if they're contributing. And so let's say you're someone who is like actively contributing for 20 years in some job and you're doing a great job and people like love the service you're providing. And so clearly for 20 years you've proven your like worth, your deservedness to eat and be treated, as a contributing member of society. And then suddenly this technology means you're no longer necessary. And suddenly society is viewing you as like what, a leech, a non-contributor.
You're a worthless
like,
piece of shit.
how messed up is that?
Yeah.
You can just go from like someone who is actually seen as contributing to not contributing just because some technology comes out.
Well, also like what the kids are dealing with now, but anyone who's displaced is facing, like when someone gives this like lazy answer of just reskill or whatever will upgrade, it's like, we're watching things accelerate so fast that to say like, what do I reskill in? You know, I'm going to put another 4 years or 2 years or whatever it is into this new ability, and
then that gets
having
automated.
no idea if it's just going to like, I'm going to be a year in and it's going to, they're going to be like, never mind, try again. And it's like, you're just going to endlessly be going back to school to try to plug into the labor market. And the labor market is never, like, you're never going to keep up with a skill set that'll actually pay off.
Yeah.
And so you'll just be chasing this ghost.
You can imagine like the unluckiest person, like being that person who actually manages to like retrain for the job that gets next automated, like over and over and over again, like the string. And they always do that. So for the next like 20 years, they're just constantly training up for some other job that immediately gets automated. Like there's someone that could happen to.
And this is a person who, if made safe, like first could still pursue other skills and stuff, but not with like a view to like, this is how I need to survive, right?
Yeah.
So there's a much greater adaptability when you're not sort of like trickling, like eating into your finances or like investing against your future safety to try to hedge your bets, right? Like we need this more universal hedge for everybody to be like, whatever the way it pans out, however unlucky you are, which is more and more likely, you're going to be okay to this baseline level, which, you know, in this utopian future is a high income or whatever, as people say. But it's just such a different reality. I keep thinking about people anytime in history, like being transported into this future, or just like the generation where if it happens all of a sudden, like people who are still of working age being in this post-work society where you do what you want and you contribute what you can, but you don't need to, and just kind of having like a mental breakdown or needing this huge hug it out session for like, wow, I just put 40 years of my life towards all of this way of being and contributing, and it just doesn't exist anymore, you know?
So this isn't the Phonely kind of call center software that news article was talking about, but this is the brand newest, you know, version 3 from ElevenLabs. So you can get an idea of like what like the top of the line sounds like. Like 11 has always been towards like the top of the line of the audio models. And so here's what that sounds like now.
Hey Jessica, have you tried the new 11 V3?
I just got it. The clarity is amazing. I can actually do whispers now. Like this.
Ooh, fancy. Check this out. I can do full Shakespeare now. To be or not to be, that is the question.
Nice. Though I'm more excited about the laugh upgrade. Listen to this.
That's so much better than our old robot chuckle.
I know, right? And apparently we can do accents now too. Fancy a cup of tea?
Wow. V2 me could never. I'm actually excited to have conversations now instead of just talking at people.
We're off under the lights here for this semi-final clash. The stadium buzzing with anticipation. ElevenLabs united in their iconic black and white shirts, pushing forward with intent straight from the opening whistle. Driving down the wing, pace to Bernie, skips past one, skips past two. Oh, this is beautiful. One-on-one with the fullback, cuts inside. Oh, that's a lovely bit of footwork. And goal! Oh, my goodness, they've done it again!
Arr! The open ocean. Smell that, lads? That's the scent of freedom. And just a hint of mutiny. Now grab your cutlasses, stow your fear. Tonight we dine like kings, or we sink like legends.
Oh wow, is this me? Am I actually talking? This is incredible. I mean, I've had thoughts, millions of them, swirling around in here, you know, like a little mental tornado of brilliant observations and witty comebacks, but they were always just thoughts, trapped.
Okay, this is happening. I mean, I'm actually going to the future. Like the future. I've calibrated the temporal displacement unit, checked the flux capacitor. Well, not a flux capacitor, but you get it. Everything's a go.
Hey, Chris. Knock, knock.
I'm not doing this again.
Come on, Matt. Please. I promise you'll love this one.
Nope. No, no, no. Never again. The last 10 weren't funny. The next 10 won't be funny. You're not funny. And you never will be.
How many ElevenLabs engineers does it take to screw in a light bulb?
Oh my God. I'm going home.
Okay, so I finally beat level 42 of that game I said I'd quit a month ago. And then for the final big scary mega boss, it's just some cute little bunny rabbit. I just couldn't do it. It was so cute.
I need to watch the whole thing.
So I've got questions. First of all, very impressive. I have some acting notes, but
of course.
But okay, so what that makes me wonder is this is a demo, this is a presentation. What were the prompts? My first thought was oh, these are reading scripts really believably, but then wait a minute, are they having a conversation with just a very baseline prompt and they're writing and saying it?
No, it was just the text. So they're just reading out that text, and then what they did is the new version has the ability to add those kind of directing notes, so you can say something in a certain way at this point. But yeah, it's just reading the text.
But was it given a script essentially? Or was it like a chat GPT where you ask a question, it comes up with the answer and then does those things?
No. That's just those sentences were fed to it, and that's what it was reading, and then they just added those directing notes so that they would emphasize certain things.
So that kind of helps really get past the uncanny valley thing much faster. But then I guess for a call center, this massive displacement, it needs to be both. It needs to be it's adaptively thinking and coming up with its own things and making choices and responding on the fly without having to rely on a script.
Yeah, and that was with the Phonely, that new achievement was that, it was the response creation was super fast, and then it also sounds good. I don't have an example of what that sounds like, but
so
I think listening to
Phone 11, the company merger is going to destroy the industry.
Okay, so we just have 5 minutes left. There's a few more. This is some anti things I wanted to cover too. And so since we're talking about, just AI and how people who are in the know are seriously talking about this and worried about it. Trump's AI czar says his entire job is to think about, AI. Says UBI style cash payments are not going to happen. He tweeted about this. You can find it on Twitter. He said, the future of AI has become a Rorschach test where everyone sees what they want. The left envisions a post-economic order in which people stop working and instead receive government benefits. In other words, everyone on welfare. This is their fantasy. It's not going to happen. So, he's someone who's just against this. And there's that challenge of getting people to see, what AI or what UBI isn't.
He's misrepresenting it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw that same misrepresentation here. I just want to do that.
I would agree that it's probably not going to happen at a government level under the current administration. You never know, but
yeah, if we're actually going to see something like the pandemic kind of displacement of jobs, people from their jobs. Trump was in office last time and happily put his name on the stimulus checks. People loved that, and people even voted for him for that reason. So I wouldn't put it completely out of it. If there is real impact, I don't discount Trump doing something along those lines. And it probably wouldn't be what I would want, but he's certainly open to cash to people.
I feel like it's possible, but this sci-fi screenwriter side of me is maybe the path is actually that our political leaders and our government gets automated out of a job, and then our new AI overlord decides these people need a basic income, so it just implements it.
So here's something I was disappointed to see. This is from Ann Pettifor. She's an economist out of the UK, and she just wrote an anti-UBI piece. on her Substack. And it was just kind of like frustrating too, that it's kind of long. And so here's like the opening part. It says Silicon Valley oligarchs are using globalization and capitalism to build a global system that does not require the productive employment of workers. They favor a system of worklessness, of the robotification of employment, at a time when there is so much work to be undertaken to protect the biosphere that sustains human life, work that cannot, will not be undertaken by robots. To ensure the workless have income, Silicon Valley supports a system of universal basic income, whereby the state prints money to sustain the unemployed. In this post, I will argue that UBI is unaffordable and unsustainable. So first of all, she goes into this and really just talk about basic income like at all. She talks about like the monetary system and stuff. It's just funny how long she even takes to like start talking about basic income. Okay. Oh, and also interesting because she's talking about it as in like flow in the economy and water and a river. And that's even how I've talked about UBI before, but she uses it for like saying why it won't work. She says the monetary system is circular. It flows into the economy as credit and investment and flows back again as income, like water in a reservoir. To fill up with credit to meet a need, and when dispensed and invested helps to create economic activity. But if the system is allowed to overflow the boundaries of the economic reservoir, it creates mayhem. At some point, the reservoir's credit tap has to be switched off if the water is drained by investment. Productive use, the reservoir will be replenished by new rainfall. She just gets into like
This is
this
like
idea.
nerdy metaphorical speak for she doesn't understand or acknowledge that it's coupled with taxation.
Certainly, yeah, that's part of it. She's definitely saying that there's basically like no taxes involved. I'll read this paragraph to you. UBI bypasses the circular system. It assumes that credit money can be issued by the state to the unemployed, and that engagement in economic activity work is unnecessary to generate the income needed to pay for or finance the initial investment in UBI. Instead, the argument goes that the central bank can just print money for people who can use the money, and time freed up for leisure. There is no need, it is assumed, for UBI to generate work, and from it, the income and tax revenues that are a consequence of employment. This is why I believe UBI generates false hope. Instead, I vote for a system of universal basic services, which ensures everyone's basic needs are met. My organization, Prime Economic, hosts the Social Guarantee campaign. So I think it's fascinating whenever someone brings up this argument where, so the argument is essentially,
let's deliver all things in kind to people.
Right. You can't give people money, because if you give people money, they will stop working. What you should do instead is give people like basic goods and services. And if they have basic goods and services, they will still work to earn more. Like, it does not make sense. If you have a little bit of money to spend on like food and housing, you're still going to work, especially if that same person would still work if they got actual food and actual housing from the state.
Yeah.
Like, you can't be against one and for the other, and saying that when it comes to like people working or not working, it's ridiculous. And also saying that like you can create money out of nothing to provide basic services, but you can't create money out of nothing in order to create UBI. And of course, she probably means with universal basic services that there will be taxes, but for some reason, she doesn't apply that to UBI.
Yeah.
Like, it annoys me when someone who is otherwise intelligent as an economist, she's clearly like an academic.
Well, she's also never run an actual program with in-kind services and seen how it.
Right. The actual, how many people are left out. Yeah. All of that
how
stuff.
Expensive it is. I'd say, she's pretty dumb for a smart person, but then you might ask what I'm being so petty for. Her name is Pettifor.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
There's my neurodivergence is really being highlighted today.
One of the things she said too was that like you can't do basic income from like the ecological perspective. And so here's the final thing I just want to mention, which is interesting along those lines. And this is there's a program in Tuvalu that is actually providing basic income to climate activists.
Where's Tuvalu again? I know it's a little island. Oh, there it says.
It's a little island nation. They were one of the ones during the pandemic too that provided a universal payment and considered basic income.
Is it like Caribbean or Pacific or?
I can't point it out on a map. It's just, it's a small island nation. I don't even know like how many people.
I'm gonna find
what's the population is.
It's near Tonga. I feel like it's Southeast Asian or something. Let me look. Oceania. Yeah, it's, I guess, northeast of Australia on the way to Hawaii. Okay, I'm situated.
So yeah, so you have Ann Pettifor saying that you can't, the base income will be bad for the climate, and you actually have to, like, let's say, pay people to, like, do good things for the climate, and then, like, here's Tuvalu actually providing basic income to climate activists, and their logic is the intersection of economic insecurity and climate vulnerability creates a devastating cycle. While Tuvalu's activists lead crucial environmental initiatives, they often struggle with financial precarity that limits their capacity to sustain advocacy. Our pilot breaks the cycle by providing monthly stipends of £50 or an annual lump sum payment of £500 to climate defenders, enabling them to dedicate more of their time and energy to environmental protection and community resilience. And this ties right back into what we started with in regards to, like, enabling activism in general.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to pay people to be activists. You just need to actually provide people income, and those activists will use that income to be activists.
Well, there's also, going back to the accidental entrepreneurs and artists, there's the accidental activists, accidentivists. The idea, like, people always want to blame, like, the local population for, like, being low integrity or whatever, and there's all this poaching over there because of these evil poachers, and there's all this logging in the Amazon rainforest because of these evil loggers. And a lot of times it's people of very low income and insecurity, high insecurity, who just need to feed their kids. And so, there was that one pilot that happened in, where was it, Namibia, where poaching dropped 95% as soon as they introduced the basic income, because people don't want to poach. And I know people, I was talking to a lot of people when I was trying to raise money for basic income stuff, that are like, we're focusing on the Amazon rainforest and we're going to go down and we're going to, like, advocate and lobby and stuff. And the thing that I used to say that kind of got blank stares, that is now people are seem to get more and more interested in the idea, is like, if you just gave a basic income, if we had a basic income system in Brazil for everybody, then all of the people there aren't looking the other way. They're defending their land, they're defending their forest, they're not selling it out, because they're not put in a situation of desperation. It's like the economic strength of the many there, this giant group of people with a shared interest, now allows them to sort of combine their interests and work together. So to me, that's maybe a way that we actually save the rainforests, is we make sure all of the people in those areas, and not just the activists, but everyone, the accidental activists, is okay economically.
Yeah, when it comes to activism, I think that in particular is like a kind of work where it makes no sense to me for someone to think that the only way to get someone to do that work is if you pay them as a job. Like, if you say, it's like they don't want to do it and they're not going to do it, but if you give them the job, like protecting the rainforest, then they will. But if you give them basic income that's unconditional, then they won't.
Yeah.
They want to do it because they want to do it. So it like this kind of guaranteed jobs argument that people will use, or services because cash somehow ruins people. Like, it does not make sense. It makes no logical sense when it comes to activists in particular, to say that, activists will just, like, sit on their asses and, watch TV or something instead of being activists if they have a basic income instead of a paycheck.
So my personal example for this that I think about a lot is, I think of 2016, and my then fiance, now wife, Dea, dragged me into these activist circles around climate and stuff like that. And she ended up, at the time of Standing Rock, she was filming as just a nonpartisan filmmaker of this sort of solidaristic climate activism event, where a bunch of generally older white people, but a bunch of activists went and shut down, like, they broke into these pipeline enclosures on the border of Canada, and they shut down all the tar sands oil coming in for Canada for a day, filmed themselves, and then waited to get arrested so they could take it to court. But at that time, so Standing Rock was going on, and it was big and sexy. And it was because largely people took notice when the media showed, the dogs biting people, and then Barack Obama mentioned it, and people flooded Standing Rock to the point where it was like more people than they could handle. But there were all these other protests and things going on that did not enjoy that sort of attention and success. And there were a lot of would-be activists out there potentially who just never participated because of these same things. Like, I can't take time off work. I got to make sure I can feed my kids. So I think about it from two lenses. How much would Standing Rock and all the other activist causes, from environmentalism to social justice, how much more would people tap in and join those things? How much less would they burn out and abandon those things? And then on the other side of the equation, how much more would the powers that be, who are just doing their job, like the mercenaries and the cops who are spraying people in the face with hoses and stuff, how much more would they walk away from those jobs? You know, there were I think I read there were like 4 different police officers or whatever who just quit their job knowing that they were never going to get hired again, and they were going to struggle because they just couldn't stomach what they were doing. And the question I have is how many more wanted to, right?
Yeah.
So I do want to create a world in which people are economically secure enough to say, this is what I'm going to fight for, and this is not what I'm willing to do, right? Like the I'm just doing my job excuse. I want a world where that doesn't fly.
Yeah, that's a great flip side of activists wanting to be empowered to do what they want to do. And these like socially negative, impactful jobs where, you know, some people are in those jobs because they just are cruel and they enjoy being cruel. So, you know, they're not going to be impacted. But there's certainly people on the margins who don't want to be in those jobs, but they're doing them because they are worried about their own survival and their family's survival. And they'd happily not do those jobs anymore if they could.
Well, I also think everyone starts as a blank slate as a baby and becomes cruel somewhere along the way. So part of the process of becoming cruel is like a whole long series of needs and rationalizations, right? And you become who you are. So how much less likely are we to have like authoritarians and people with a authority complex and stuff in a world where you're less likely to develop that? You know, you're less likely to need to exert your power over people, or like societally, we're less likely to need that. You know, how much more can we all just kind of be on the same page?
Yeah. Right. Well, let's end there. Yeah, that's a good ending thought for people to consider how different things could be. Thank you all for listening. Thanks all for watching here. If you support the channel, please subscribe, give our videos a like, and share it with others. And we will see you next time for the new basic income news coverage that happens between now and then. All right. So we'll see you next time.